Look at this valley. Nestled in the mountains of northern Turkey, sit 700 identical fairy tale castles with French Gothic turrets, marble balconies, and ornate spires. From above, it looks like a glitch in reality, a billion-dollar Disney dream built in the middle of nowhere. But step closer, and the fantasy vanishes. No one lives here. The windows are hollow, the plaster is peeling, and concrete decay is creeping through every room. This was meant to be the ultimate playground for foreign elites. Instead, it became a massive physical trap that broke its creators and ruined an entire valley. If you think this looks like a glitch in real estate history, hit subscribe right now. Because how this got built gets much stranger. This isn't an ancient ruin from a fallen kingdom. It's a modern, billion-dollar development failure. Less than a decade ago, heavy machinery carved up this quiet mountain valley in Bolu province to create Burj Al Babas, a hyper-dense luxury village featuring nearly 700 identical French Gothic castles. Today, it stands silent, a $200 million monument to real estate delusion, rotting in plain sight. Look at the sheer scale. We aren't talking about a couple of failed mansions or a stalled housing block. This was an entire artificial city of luxury châteaux, complete with planned Turkish baths, indoor water parks, and high-end shopping centers. Nearly 600 of these concrete castles were built before the money dried up, the workers fled, and the lawsuits arrived. How does a company build hundreds of castles without finishing a single street? The answer lies in a fatal business flaw. A project designed entirely around foreign pre-sale cash, built on a template that assumed economic stability would last forever. To understand how this dream turned into Turkey's most embarrassing ghost town, we have to go back to the moment the bulldozers first hit the valley. The story starts in Mudurnu, a historic district nestled in the pine-forested mountains of northern Turkey. For centuries, Mudurnu was known for its quiet charm, thermal springs, and traditional timber-framed Ottoman houses that date back hundreds of years. It was the kind of place where time moved slowly, far removed from the towering high-rises and hyper-development of Istanbul. But in the early 2010s, a prominent Turkish construction firm called the Sarot Group saw something else in these mountains. They didn't see an ancient town to preserve. They saw cheap land, pristine mountain air, and a hot spring water source that could be monetized. The developers, led by Mehmet and Ahmet Yildirim, came up with a radical vision. They would buy up 250 hectares of forested hillside and build a massive gated community unlike anything Europe or the Middle East had ever seen. Instead of standard Mediterranean villas or modern apartment blocks, they decided every single house on the property would be a mini French chateau. They envisioned 732 identical mini-castles packed closely together, creating an eerie, surreal landscape of European romanticism set against rural Turkish hills. The proposal promised immense prosperity. The Sarot Group claimed the project would cost around $200 million to construct and bring millions in foreign capital. Drop a comment below. Would you ever buy a luxury home that looks identical to 600 of your neighbors' homes? Or was this design doomed from day one? The local residents were horrified from the start. Was taking over their backyard. Local complaints were ignored. Money moved faster than community outrage. The Sarot Group began clear-cutting trees, pouring foundation pads, and reshaping the valley topography. But the most shocking decision wasn't just where they were building or what they were building. It was who they were building for. The Sarot Group didn't design Burj Al Babas for local buyers. They didn't even design it for wealthy citizens in Istanbul or Ankara. The domestic market in Turkey had zero interest in buying overpriced, hyper-dense French castles in a remote mountain valley. Instead, the developers bypassed the entire domestic market and pivoted directly toward ultra-wealthy buyers in the Persian Gulf. They set up aggressive marketing campaigns in Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Qatar, and Bahrain. The sales pitch was brilliant in its simplicity. Middle Eastern elites loved visiting Turkey for its cooler summer climate, mountain scenery, and thermal spas. The Sarot Group offered them a private slice of European luxury right in the Islamic world, complete with natural thermal hot water piped directly into every single chateau's private jacuzzi. The castles were priced between $300,000 and $500,000 each. That was a drop in the bucket for rich investors in Riyadh or Kuwait City looking for a cool summer retreat. To make the deal even sweeter, the sales team offered flexible installment plans. Buyers didn't have to pay the full price up front. They only needed to put down a small deposit and then make small monthly or quarterly installment payments as construction progressed. Subscribe to the channel if you love deep dive urban investigations, where massive fortunes turn into ghost towns. At first, the gamble paid off spectacularly. Foreign buyers lined up to sign contracts. The sales team sold over 300 units off plan in a matter of months. Cash was flowing in from the Gulf, and the Sarot Group felt completely invincible. They didn't just feel like they had a hit on their hands. They believed they had discovered a bulletproof business model that could be replicated endlessly. Flushed with pre-sale cash, the developers made the decision that would ultimately seal their doom. Instead of building the project in logical, manageable phases, constructing 20 or 30 castles, finishing their roads, installing utilities, and handing them over to owners before breaking ground on the next phase, they decided to build the entire mega project all at once. To build 700 castles simultaneously without going broke on labor costs, they turned construction into an industrial assembly line. They set up specialized concrete mixing stations and precast molding facilities directly on site. Instead of hiring stone carvers or custom masons, they manufactured thousands of identical concrete turrets, precast balustrades, and plastic decorative trim pieces. Walk through the valley today, and you see the result of that assembly line. Row after row of identical white shells, built on tiny lots with almost zero space between roofs. You could literally stand on your balcony and reach out and shake hands with your neighbor in the chateau next door. Privacy was completely non-existent, but the speed of construction was staggering. By 2016, nearly 600 chateau shells had risen from the mud. From a distance, the site looked like a thriving construction hive. Blueprints called for a massive central complex, featuring a grand shopping mall, an indoor aqua park, saunas, Turkish baths, sports complexes, and a mosque. Tower crane arms swung across the skyline day and night. But beneath the surface of this rapid progress lay a fatal structural flaw. The Sarot Group was pouring millions into decorative plaster, marble facades, and concrete turrets, while completely neglecting basic civil engineering. They had not finished the central power grid. They had not built the main sewage treatment facility. The roads were still dirt tracks that turned into thick grey sludge every time it rained. They were spending every dime of incoming cash on building more shells to land more pre-sales, rather than finishing the foundational infrastructure that made those homes livable. Then came the original sin. The entire financial engine of Burj Al Babas rested on one fatal assumption: that the steady stream of monthly installment payments from Gulf buyers would keep coming, month after month, without interruption. The developers had no institutional debt backstops, no major bank lines of credit, and zero cash reserves to handle a sudden market disruption. They hadn't even hedged their accounts against foreign exchange rate volatility. They were running a $200 million mega project, like a hand-to-mouth pre-sale scheme. Before we look at the structural decay, hit that like button and comment: was this bad financial planning or just terrible economic luck? In 2018, the trap snapped shut. A massive geopolitical and economic storm slammed into Turkey. Relations between Ankara and Washington deteriorated, triggering severe international sanctions. The Turkish lira went into a total tailspin, losing a massive chunk of its value against the US dollar in a matter of weeks. Inflation skyrocketed, construction material costs doubled overnight, and the Turkish economy tumbled toward recession. At the exact same time, global oil prices plunged. The ultra-wealthy investors in the Gulf suddenly saw their domestic portfolios shrink. Many of them panicked as the Turkish currency collapsed, making their future installment payments unpredictable and risky. Gulf buyers realized they were pouring money into an uncompleted project in a country facing an economic crisis. The default wave hit like a tidal wave. Hundreds of buyers simultaneously stopped making their monthly installment payments. Many cancelled their purchase contracts outright, demanding their deposits back under contractual breach clauses because construction milestones were slipping. Overnight, the Sarot Group's cash flow went from a roaring river to a dry trickle. But their ongoing expenses didn't stop. They owed millions to local subcontractors, concrete suppliers, labor crews, and equipment suppliers. With no cash coming in from the Gulf and no bank loans to draw from, the company was instantly paralyzed. Work ground to a sudden halt. The army of construction workers laid down their tools and walked off the site. Tower cranes were abandoned mid-lift. Pallets of unlaid tiles, bags of concrete mix, and rolls of insulation were left sitting exposed on the open hillside. By mid-2018, the developers owed an estimated $27 million in debt. Subcontractors filed a wave of lawsuits demanding payment for unpaid invoices. The Sarot Group attempted to negotiate, claiming that if they were given time to sell off a few dozens of their remaining units, they could pay off their debts and finish the site. But the market was dead, nobody was buying. In late 2018, a court in Istanbul delivered the death blow. The court declared the Sarot Group bankrupt and issued a strict injunction halting all commercial activity, asset sales, and construction on the site. The dream of Burj Al Babas was officially dead. If you're enjoying this investigation into real estate disasters, subscribe now so you don't miss our next story on broken mega projects. This brings us to the great midpoint reversal of the story. Most people who look at photos of Burj Al Babas assume it failed because the idea was too stupid, the castles were too ugly, or nobody wanted to buy them. They assume it was a ghost town from day one because the market rejected it. The facts reveal something far stranger. Burj Al Babas didn't fail because it couldn't sell castles. It failed because it sold them too well. The overwhelming early success of the pre-sales fooled the developers into thinking they had unlimited liquidity. It convinced them to break ground on all 587 structures at once, pouring every cent of working capital into concrete shells across 250 hectares. If they had been less greedy and built in small phases, they would have ended up with 50 finished, fully functional, marketable homes during the economic crash. Instead, their aggressive expansion left them holding nearly 600 half-built, useless, unsellable shells when the market turned. Their early success became the exact mechanism of their ultimate destruction. After the court bankruptcy ruling, the site entered legal limbo. Sarot Group management appealed the ruling, fighting in court to regain control of the assets so they could try to restructure their debt. Eventually, an appeals court partially eased the bankruptcy order, allowing the company to retain control of the property on the strict condition that they find new investors to clear their debt burden. Management tried everything. They flew back to the Gulf, begging investment funds in Kuwait and Qatar to bail them out. They tried pitches to foreign hotel consortia, pitching the site as a potential resort conversion. But no sane investor would touch the site. The reputational damage was catastrophic. The project had become a global laughingstock, a viral symbol of real estate hubris plastered across news outlets worldwide. While lawyers argued in courtrooms and executives chased non-existent investors, the physical world began taking its revenge on the site. Tell me in the comments, do you think the Turkish government should step in to demolish this, or leave it standing as a warning? Mudurnu is not located on a sunny Mediterranean beach. It sits in a high mountain inland valley that experiences severe, freezing winters with heavy snowfall, rain, and rapid freeze-thaw cycles. Houses in this region require constant heating, active maintenance, tight roof sealing, and winterization to survive. Burj Al Babas had none of those things. When construction halted, 587 castle shells were left completely unsealed. Windows were unglazed, doorways were wide open. Step in, bulldoze the whole thing, and restore the mountain forest. That brings us to the ultimate paradox, the demolition math. Tearing down nearly 600 reinforced concrete structures is not a matter of simply sending in a few wrecking balls. The site contains thousands of tons of steel-reinforced concrete, buried deep pile foundations, and heavy structural slabs poured into a hillside. Demolishing those shells, crushing the concrete, separating the rebar, hauling hundreds of thousands of tons of debris out of a remote mountain valley via narrow regional roads, and regrading the soil would cost tens of millions of dollars. Once the site is cleared, planting trees and restoring the eroded ecosystem would cost millions more. The raw land value of 250 hectares in rural Bolu province, especially now that its landscape is scarred and its reputation is ruined, is worth only a fraction of that demolition bill. Neither the local municipality of Mudurnu nor the national government in Ankara is willing to spend tens of millions in public taxpayer funds to clean up the mess left behind by a bankrupt private developer. And so, the double lock remains firmly shut. It costs too much money to complete. It costs too much money to convert. It costs too much money to destroy. Today, Burj Al Babas sits in total silent exile. It has become a surreal monument to an era of unhinged speculative development, a place where the dream of foreign wealth and rapid expansion ran headfirst into economic reality, leaving behind a ghost town of 700 copy-paste châteaux. The site's only active life now comes from an unintended audience. It has become one of the most famous ruin porn destinations on Earth. Every month, urban explorers, drone pilots, travel vloggers, and curious tourists sneak past rusted perimeter fences to walk through the muddy, silent streets. Music videos have been shot in its hollow plazas, and drone footage of the turreted grid routinely racks up millions of views online. The contrast is stunning. The developers spent $200 million trying to build an exclusive private paradise for the world's wealthiest individuals. Instead, they built a viral backdrop for internet tourists taking photos of crumbling concrete. The story of Burj Al Babas isn't just about bad architectural taste or a strange design choice. It is a cautionary tale about what happens when developers treat physical buildings like speculative financial tokens, ignoring geography, culture, economic reality, and basic engineering. It is what happens when ambition moves faster than infrastructure and pre-sale promises replace real financial backing. The developer thought he was building the future. Today, the valley remains frozen in time, an endless sea of decaying French spires slowly sinking into the Turkish mud, waiting for a rescue plan that will never make financial sense. Subscribe now for more stories of massive physical objects that became too expensive to fix, too hard to tear down, and too embarrassing to ignore.